and thank you for being here today with us. Good morning for the ones in Southeast Asia and this part of the world. We are in Singapore, and good evening to all the ones in Latin America. As the Latin American Chamber of Commerce, a non-for-profit association, which our goal is represent the interest of the private sector from Latin America and Southeast Asia, in Latin America, we are more than happy to welcome you today to talk about Brazil. This is the second webinar within our webinar series called Business Opportunities in Latin America. We're talking about the largest economy in Latin America, and one of the largest in the world, Brazil. We have great panelists today that will walk us through the different, the landscape and the different business opportunities that exist in that country. So without further ado, I'm going to give the mic to Angela Torres, our Executive Director, so she can give us the welcome words. Angela, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Felipe, and good morning for those who are in Asia, and good evening as well for our colleagues in Brazil. So I would like to start this webinar welcoming João Vargas, who is the Deputy Chief of Mission of the Embassy of Brazil in Singapore, for some welcome remarks. João, please.
Thank you very much, Angela, and good morning to everyone. Thank you to the Latin American Chamber of Commerce Singapore for organizing this event and for the invitation to say a few words on behalf of the Brazilian Embassy. Today's program promises to give you a concrete ground-level insight into doing business in Brazil. I'm simply here to welcome you. The substantive expertise lies with our speakers. Few people are aware of how Brazil and Singapore have deepened their economic ties over the past few years. Last year, bilateral trade between the two countries reached 10.7 billion US dollars. Singapore is now Brazil's seventh largest export destination, ahead of traditional partners such as Chile, Germany, or Japan. That ranking reflects how deeply integrated our economies already are, but they still have a lot of room to grow. Take the Mercosur-Singapore Free Trade Agreement, for instance. It covers tariff reductions, services, investment, government procurement, and digital trade. For Singaporean companies, that means more predictable market access and stronger legal protections when operating in Brazil. Ratification of the agreement is still underway, as you know, but early movers will be best positioned to reap the benefits when it comes into force. Diversification of our economic links is ongoing. Beyond the traditional trade in fuels and agribusiness, we're seeing Singaporean interest in infrastructure and energy transition, agri-tech and food systems, and tech in general. Over the past few years, Brazil's regulatory environment has evolved and made it easier to do business. There are new legal frameworks for project finance, and a major tax reform is well underway. At both state and federal levels, we're seeing lots of activity from investment promotion agencies to attract foreign investment. Brazil has also been strengthening its regulatory framework for investment and services, for example, through new investment protection rules and arbitration mechanisms. In financial services, the Brazilian Central Bank and Securities and Exchange Commission have modernized licensing, open banking standards, and cross-border payment rules. The result is a more predictable environment for Singaporean firms looking to establish or expand operations. I encourage you to fully engage with today's speakers and use this network, which can be such an important lever for turning interest into deals. Thank you again to LATAM Sham for convening us, and enjoy the session.
Thank you very much, João. And you made my presentation very easy. You already touched on several of the points that I will be touching upon. I will be sharing my screen with a presentation about opportunities and business investment in Brazil. Can you see it now?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So I will start this presentation with actually a quote from the speech done by Barack Obama in his presidential visit in 2011, where he says the people of Brazil should know that the future has arrived and it's time to seize it, referring this to actually to Brazil. And actually, that's very true, and we see a lot of potential in Brazil, and this is what we are going to talk about. So first, I will base my presentation of giving you some information about why Brazil and the sectors where we see this investment and business potential. Why Brazil? First, Brazil is the 11th largest economy in the world. It has one of the largest population, seventh largest population. It has institutional stability and neutrality. Diplomacy is very neutral and is rich in natural resources. And the key sectors that we see is agriculture and related to agribusiness and what we will be calling bioeconomy, energy and mining, infrastructure, and digital economy. So I'll walk you through these ones. So first, why Brazil? So we say that is the 11th largest economy. Actually, 2024, it was the 10th largest economy. Here you can see a graphic that is just after the economy of Canada. And it has a GDP of $2.2 trillion with a GDP growth rate estimated of 2.4 for this year will be at 2.5% according to the IMF. And we have to look actually at the growth of the economy in the last 24 years. And actually there is an expectation that it will continue growing to 2030. So there are key sectors of this performance, that is agriculture, manufacturing, and construction. And there's an immense amount of infrastructure projects. And as João mentioned it, reforms that will actually increase this growth. Population. Let's talk about actually Brazilian people, besides they love football that we all know. They are increasing economically active population that will be expected to be like that for the next years, at least for the 2 decades before hitting this economically active population turning point. We have seen Japan has touched and peaked in 1990, and China now is starting to decelerate. So we are looking at new economies like Brazil is one of them, Indonesia is another one of them. The population is very concentrated in some of the states, so the state of Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Minas Gerais, and Paraná, and as well Rio Grande do Sul. So this is the south east and the south region. What is very important to mention here is that actually most of the Brazilian population belongs to lower middle class and working class. So it's a class that has economic facility for consumption that is 47% about in the entire Brazil. And you can see that there are some states that have a larger middle class than others. So there's a graphic that you can refer to. What is very interesting actually is that over the years, Brazil has been making some educational reforms. And these educational reforms has been all planned in order to actually increase the number of students. And here I have put a graphic where you can see that there is a very high percentage, growing number of students in the engineering, health, education field, and social studies. So this is also very positive for the new industries to come. Institutional is stable and is Brazil has always advocated to have a neutral diplomacy. So in this geopolitical time, this is very important. Of course, you have seen and hear many scandals about the different presidents in Brazil that has been not hidden. But this is very much between the left and the wing governments that has been alternated in the last years. And I have put here an example from actually when Brazil became came back to democracy after the dictatorship. They got have 8 different presidents in power, but you can see that there's a swing between left and right. The system has and institutions has been continuing very stable, and this is also thanks to the legislative power that you can see that is very mixed. So there is no political radicalization as such in a country like Brazil. Something that is very important here is that the Central Bank of Brazil, what we call Banco Central do Brasil, it's a very independent and political free institution. And their main objective is to stabilize the prices, control inflation, and it does it applying its own monetary policy. So you can actually see in this graphic for the last 24 years, how it has moved the internal interest rate and inflation. Despite actually the Brazilian real is one of the most volatile currencies in emerging markets. In terms of diplomacy and its neutrality, so Brazil is a very large power in exporting agro-commodities. It exports everywhere in the world. It kind of like takes the same rule as medication. They will export everywhere, and they will not be held by any colors. And Brazil in the last year has become actually more active in the large, I would say, blocks. So in BRICS, in G20 last year has a very important role, well, the year before. And it's part of Mercosur. Mercosur and Singapore has signed an agreement. And other countries here of the region are looking actually at enter at Mercosur, like Vietnam has already started its projections to enter Mercosur, and also has been Indonesia. President Lula was actually invited to the ASEAN meeting last year, which is the only president of Latin America that has done this and has actually an agreement with the ASEAN countries to participate. Then, of course, why Brazil has huge natural resources. And when we talk about huge natural resources, this is, of course, reflected as well in its diversity of its economy. So here's a picture of how diverse its economy is. As huge as agro commodities are, it represents within the GDP as 6%. But actually, most of the entire chain of the agro commodities is linked to the other one. Is linked to construction, is linked to manufacturing, is linked to infrastructure. It's a top mining, has a top mining potential with critical minerals. It's an agriculture superpower. It's very rich in energy as well in oil and in renewable energy. It's a global leader. Is the country with the largest arable land in the world. As today, it used 33% of the territory, and 66% of the territory is in a conservation land. When we talk about Brazil, Brazil is always like number one in coffee, sugar, soybean. So for most of us who drinks coffee and orange juice in the breakfast, we were just consuming 100%, mostly 100% Brazilian products. Is the largest iron ore producer, and also in terms of beef and poultry, it takes number one. And as well, corn and grain produce. Corn is number 3, grain producer is number 4. Production is very large, and also is the second largest exporters of agro commodities. Let's look at now the key sectors that we are seeing very large opportunities for business and investments. So first one is agriculture and agribusiness. And here I will refer to the term bioeconomy. And it's very linked to these rich and resources. So Brazil agriculture and has an environmental potential because first, global demand of food is growing. It is a leading exporter of agri-commodities, as just mentioned before. It has an opportunity to improve productivity, which that is the main reason why Brazil is one of the largest exporters. So it can crop up to 3 times. There's an institute called Embrapa that actually has a lot of technology into the agribusiness, but we also welcome others type of technologies that can come into the country and grow their business there, like as precision agriculture. There's a huge opportunity for developing the industry of fertilizers, because Brazil depends a lot of importing fertilizers, but has all the potential to actually develop in-house fertilizers facilities. And as well, the potential to expand on processed food, so not just being on a commodity trap, but start actually creating a larger industry of food production, and is the second largest today producer of biofuels, and we will be seeing that the demand of biofuels is growing, and also they are doubling up in the next years to come the production of biofuels on corn ethanol. What we see in the biodiversity advantage is that probably a lot of the richness that is in the different biomes of Brazil has not been discovered. There is a huge wealth of plants and animals, microorganisms in all these forests and savannas. So there's a large potential to creating new food, like what we call new ingredients, creating pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, and bioactive compounds. So for all those that are into developing new ingredients and new projects, we will welcome very much actually to look at these sectors. And there's actually a special funds that you can tap into it. What we call the Amazon for All, for example. And of course, where we looking here for international investors, it will be the need of applied science and innovation. Bioeconomy as a wealth of creation. So we are looking actually at together with carbon sequestration, we are looking actually a huge potential that Brazil has in carbon credit market, all the agroforestry business models that has been starting to be deployed, also upon demands of being a more sustainable production. Large opportunities in land regeneration. So land regeneration can be structured as basically real estate investments. And this is a very interesting because Brazil is not expanding their protected areas to get more arable land for production. What they are doing is actually taking these degraded lands and applied all a process to start use them again. So this is like an investment of 7 years. So there's a lot of potential there, and I really will invite you to start looking very closely at this. And last, of course, Brazil, what it can be is can create solutions on the bioeconomy and environmental solutions, actually to leverage them to become a very important business in their bioeconomy. The next sector is energy and mining. And well, we have been hearing a lot about renewable energy. And in terms of renewable energy, Brazil is, I would say, king into it. 87% of its electricity comes from renewable sources, such as hydro, solar, and wind. Of course, it's the highest among the G20 economies. Most important is that here we are opening to new industries and new opportunities. So everything that is related to data centers and AI infrastructure. So Brazil actually provides one of the lowest cost and low carbon energy potentials. It is there, it's been developed, so it's available. So we will be very keen to actually discuss with more companies that are looking to data centers. And I have to say that there's depending on the state, you can be looking at it, and there is an incentive given. Mining, we all know that critical minerals is a very important area also for the sustainability transition. So, and it's not only in mining projects, which we have mining projects for investment in exploration, in processing, technology and innovation, but also the infrastructure around it. So railways and ports. Apex Brazil actually has created a very interesting portfolio of projects for investment. So if you have interest, please let us know. We will be happy to provide this information and connect with the colleagues of Apex Brazil. The last that I will be moving to is infrastructure. So I will touch upon this more in the next slides. But what we are seeing is that actually, despite all these huge opportunities that we see in Brazil, Brazil's infrastructure is very weak. So there's, in order for Brazil actually to grow at a larger economy at a faster pace, it requires huge investments in infrastructure. Infrastructure is growing by public-private partnerships. Something I want to highlight here is that somehow these projects, PPP's projects, are not being decided upon the ideological politicians. So, because these are projects to at 10, 20, and even 30 years. So they are not really fighting on like being doing railways or construction of new ports. There is a bank in Brazil that's called BNDES, which these banks also is a state bank. Actually always comes to support the development of these public-private partnerships. Most of this infrastructure we have seen is infrastructure and connectivity. State of Sao Paulo is probably one of the biggest one in terms of projects. So it's modernization of railways, upgrade of subways, state highways. Some has been already awarded, but we are still seeing a lot of projects being available in on the state level and on the federal level. And also a lot of infrastructure in what we call social infrastructure. That is the construction of hospitals, schools, and also construction of prisons, like in the state of Minas Gerais, Paraná, Rio de Janeiro, Bahia, Rio Grande do Sul. Last one I want to touch is digital economy. So basically, Brazil is the country in Latin America with the highest numbers of unicorns. There's 26 unicorns. It's a very well-established innovation hub. It has a very set internet capacity. So the infrastructure in terms of internet is set up there. The population of Brazil, it's very digital savvy. So very similar as what you see in Southeast Asia is what you will see in Brazil. Everybody's connected to their phones. Everybody actually, it's very keen to adapt new technologies. The agriculture sector is very keen in adapting new technologies. Actually, they're even adapting more technologies than the agriculture sector in the US, for example. What has been driving this digital economy? It was the creation of what we call PIX. So PIX is a payment system created by the Central Bank of Brazil. Basically, what it has done, as you can see here in this screen, the PIX system has integrated and provide payment facilities to most of Brazilians. So this is a system created by the central bank, which actually is free of charge. So everybody basically can get paid and received. And that has been the key cause of the exponential growth of digital economy. PIX is probably like the first step, what Banco do Brasil or the Central Bank of Brazil is doing. What Central Bank will be doing in the near future is the development of DREX, D-R-E-X. So I think that go into the internet, look for it. It's very interesting because Singapore and the countries here in the regions are very much into fintech. There will be many things that can be done in Brazil. So the idea is actually to tokenizations of credits, creating escrow accounts. So basically the possibility to access easier to credits and move much faster financial assets. However, all these opportunities, we cannot be just as naive. Brazil is in the 124th place on global ease of doing business. There's a high cost of production of goods and services in the country by something that we call custo Brazil, which is the Brazilian cost. Okay, so what we have seen that is happening, that has been the case in Brazil. So Brazil still has very high trade barriers and not many free trade agreements. Good news is that this is changing. They are actually becoming a more globalized economy. We just saw last week's finally the signing and the of the EU and Brazil trade agreement, which was not Brazil, it was the Mercosur and the EU trade agreement. There has been usually a very low spending in research and development compared to the other countries, despite they have very good institutions as Embrapa. The regulations in Brazil in the tax system is very complex and efficient because each state will have a different kind of tax system, and then on the national level we'll have another tax system, so it kind of complicates. As I mentioned, the Brazil infrastructure is underdeveloped, so there's a lot of constraint in logistics. So my point here is that a state actually has been very, regulators and the government has been very keen in overcome this challenge. So therefore, there's a lot of projects in infrastructure. And can you imagine if today's agri-commodities of Brazil are so competitive, even have this coast to Brazil? Imagine in the future when we have like railways and new ports. Taxation. So I come here to my next slide that I took from a presentation done by Bain Company, where here they're telling you what are the next reforms. So the tax reforms, what they are aiming to do is actually to unify taxes and basically do not have this confusion on a state and different states and make it more easy for investors, because what they are looking after is actually having more investors coming. Brazil for the past year has been the fifth largest foreign direct investment destiny. So despite all this, investors still coming, but the idea is to make it more easy for the investors. We are all seeing three reforms, that is in the open finance, PIX and REX, which this is going to drive very much the digital economy, as we just mentioned. And there is an admin reform. That admin reform is actually to contain the long-term fiscal pressure. And this, what we'll do is that alleviate inflation and cost of Brazil administration. So with this, I will conclude, and I will come to my next part of this presentation, which I would like to welcome Rodrigo Felipe Afonso, who is our country manager in Brazil. So Rodrigo, good evening to you.
Good evening, Angela. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Great to have you here. So Rodrigo, first, give us an introduction about your work as a country manager, your representation as a country manager in Brazil, and a short introduction about yourself.
Okay, so thank you again. So good morning, everyone, from Singapore and from Southeast Asia, and good evening for the ones here from Brazil. So I joined Latam Chan in the beginning of 2024, even though I know Angela since 2015 when I was living and working in Singapore. So since 2 years ago, we've been, facilitating the connections, the business, and the relations between Southeast Asian and South America. So myself, I'm based here in Brazil, and I have colleagues based in other countries here in South America to help you to set up a business or to understand more about the Brazilian economy, about understand more about how to do business with South American countries from Southeast Asia. I worked for a bank, a Brazilian bank, for 30 years, and 4 years I worked in Singapore. So from 2011 to 2015, I had the opportunity to live and work in Singapore. and so was a very good experience. And since then, I've been connected with Singapore, with the Singaporean institutions and Singaporean companies, and I have so many friends from there as well. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Rodrigo. So this session is very much like a fire chat and a talk. So if there's questions from the participants, please let us know. The idea is to give you an on-the-ground information of the realities of doing business in Brazil. So let's start talking a little bit more on the strategy and the entry in the market of Brazil. So for many of those who are looking to enter Brazil for the first time, what will be your most like single important advice or the playbook to succeed?
Okay. So first of all, I think it's very important to say that Brazilians are very friendly, right? So I mean, we are known to be friendly to foreigners. So we are very welcoming. Um, so Brazil is a big country, as you said, and it's a continental country, right? To have more than 200 million people, and we are very diverse in a way, even though we speak only one language, and. We have so many communities here in Brazil. We have the big Japanese community, we have the Chinese community, Koreans, Arabics, and we have people from Europe, right? All the ones who came to Brazil 100 or 150, 20 years ago, I mean, to have a new opportunity. And these people from these communities, they are now Brazilians. I mean, they are all together with us, and it's a very mixed a country as well, right? So I really believe that for a new company to enter in the Brazilian market, right? So it's first of all, it's very important to do a very deep study about the Brazilian market. Um, because depending on the product, depending on the service, so it to be uh, more suitable to go to one state or to one region of Brazil because, as I said, it's a very diverse country. So we have uh, the, the most of the population in Brazil are in the southeast, especially the state of São Paulo, where I'm based. The state of São Paulo has 46 million people. The city of São Paulo has 12 million people. So it's the most richest state of Brazil. So represents the whole state represents um, 30% of the GDP, which is a lot, right? So I think a new company to coming to Brazil, especially a foreign company, again, has to understand as Angela said, the legal environment, right? So it's important to have a local partner, a local advisor to help you and support you entering in the Brazilian market. Um, but I think as you mentioned, the most important thing for me for a new company entering in Brazil is to understand the Brazilian the consumer behavior, right? Brazilians have, I mean, I would say their own way. I mean, in terms of consumption and the behavior. So it's important to understand this in order to be successful in your endeavor here in Brazil.
Thank you, Rodrigo. And you said something that is super true. Brazilians are very friendly. Of course, there's a characteristics about Brazil per se that historically they have been always been very welcoming. Brazil as such was not like a colony, but was the kingdom of Portugal. So you don't have this colonial feeling, and then you have people coming from Europe, from Japan. From Europe, you have the German influence, the Italian influence, very, very strong. So it's very easy to actually make a relationship. But how would you say that? What will be the key to make this very trust-based relationship that will give you long-term success?
Yeah, that's also very important, right? To build trust. So I think to build trust here in Brazil, Sorry for the noise. It's important to spend time, I mean, to face meetings as much as possible, right? And even though sometimes we are more informal in the conversation, but so it's good to keep this informality in a way, but like continuing the conversation, and in order to build this relationship a long time, right? Um, so sometimes it can take time, right? The building, the trust building, but once Brazilians are very, as I said, informal. They are very open in a way, and I mean. Sometimes we don't say no, we say maybe, we say could be, right? In order to say no, so we are not so direct like the North Americans, for example, in my opinion, right? And the other cultures. Um, so so it will take time, but once you give time for this relationship to be built, I'm sure the relationship will be very long lasting. So because people will trust in each other, and things will happen, right? So so that's I think my opinion about it, and we like to build relationships. We like to do business, of course, with other cultures. I mean, to understand the needs, to understand, I mean, the way of doing business from of other countries as well. And as I said, we are very welcoming in many ways, and in a way, even though we are not good at the rankings of ease of doing business, right? But I think once the foreigner finds or the right partner, things will develop. So we have so many successful cases, I would say, here in Brazil about foreign companies coming here, and foreign investors coming here, and succeeding, and so I'm sure it will happen once the people or the company give time for this.
Thank you, Rodrigo. One thing I have noticed is that when you go and invest in Brazil, people might think that Brazil is just one country. But the reality is that within Brazil, you have many countries. So, what would be your advice of how to walk through this, like national level, and actually more into the regions and even to the state? So, you're in Sao Paulo, where most of business will come to Sao Paulo. So, if you could explain a little bit of this duality that we see on national and states.
Yeah, you are right. So we say that there are many Brazils, right, within one Brazil. So which is totally true in terms of culture, in terms of origin, right? So we have I mean, in the south, depending on the city or the region, the the origins from Europe, right? The Europeans went there. Here in São Paulo, we have a mix of everything, right? So it really depends. We have the Amazon, we have the northeast of Brazil as well. So a very mixed region. So even some fruits, some products, I mean, have different names in the different regions of the country, right? I don't know all the names. I don't know sometimes what the person is saying because I'm not from that region, right? So that's why we have many small countries within this big country, and it's very important for again for a foreigner, an international company to come to Brazil to really understand that region, right? I mean the behavior, the culture, I mean the needs, right? So in order to succeed. It's really very important. So I mean, the research must be very, I mean, on the ground, right? Do, I mean, research, talk to people, talk to companies to understand the particularities of each region in Brazil. So each region has its own needs, it has its own, I mean, interest, right? In terms of everything, right? So it really depends on many things as well. So so Brazilians are very I mean, talking about business, right? Price is sensitive, right? Of course, and even the behavior at work is different depending on the region, right? I mean, I would say in São Paulo, I mean, people tend to be faster, tend to be more stressed, right, than other regions, and so the rhythm is different. So you can succeed in one place in Brazil and not and do not succeed in another place. So again, research, um, understanding the behavior on the ground is very important. That would be my advice.
And Rodrigo, if we talk about regulations, I think one of the key complexities of investing in Brazil is managing the regulation. The regulatory environment is quite complex and dynamic. I know there are some reforms, as we just saw it, and Joao also mentioned. But if you can give an example of how you can navigate these major regulatory hurdle or changes on, and what lessons you have learned of doing business there, and what will be your best advice.
Yeah. So that's a very practical approach, right? So I mean, you really need to engage a local legal advisor, right? You have to talk to the regulators. I mean, they are open to talk to new companies, to new entrepreneurs here in Brazil as well. Talk to industry associations. I mean, local advisors, right? I mean, from many areas, right? And be yourself available and keen on. I mean, talk to these people and solve the problems, etc. Right? Be available, and so again, if you are really keen on investing and opening a company or a business here in Brazil, it's important to talk to regulators, to have your local legal advisor, and again talk to other participants in the industry, even competitors, right? Of course, to understand, I mean, from them, I mean, their opinions and challenges, and from even other companies that came to Brazil, even from other sectors, but to share again the challenges and the knowledge, right? So that's the best approach, very practical approach, and to understand better the environment, right? So that's why a long-term, mid-long-term approach is better because there will be volatility, there will be some um, things, I mean, happening along the way. So fluctuations, right, and changing government. So all these things. So that's why, if you want to come to Brazil, in my opinion, I mean, thinking about companies and businesses that succeeded here, so you have to think long term.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Yeah, that's engaging a law firm is essential, a legal advisor. And actually, in the Latam Cham, we have many legal advisors which are members that we have had great experience, and we will be happy to connect for those who are thinking to actually expand into Brazil. You come from banking, so this is a question just right for you. Actually, when we look at volatility of currencies in emerging markets, the Brazilian real comes up as one of the highest volatilities, which is essentially one like reality. And from your experience, what will be the practical risk mitigation for operating in this environment of Brazilian real, and then we need to bring home back in dollars?
Yeah. So that's right. So we have some volatility in the currency. We have some volatility in the interest rates, etc., along the way. And but I think the good news is that we have a liquid market. So if you're a foreigner, you bring your dollars to Brazil, and then exchange to reais, and then sometime later you want to exchange the reais to dollars again, or to euros, or to yens, or to Singapore dollars. So no problem. There is liquidity in the market, right? You mentioned in your presentation the Brazilian Central Bank is an independent, institutional body, and they are very professional. They are very good at what they do, and they are always paying attention to the market. So, so there is volatility, but there is also liquidity, which is important. So it's a deep market, and so depending on the business, right? So of the company, coming to Brazil, if it's possible to have like natural hedge, right? Hedges, for example. So if you're spending, of course, we're here in Brazil, we are paying the local employees in the local currency, and if you can match the costs and the revenues in the same currency, it's better, right? And or if not, you can also take advantage of this because uh, by being here, you have some local financial people helping you as well, support you in your business, and they will know how to navigate into this, environment, right? And but always paying attention to, in your agreements, in your contracts here, to index, to the local inflation, if the practice of that market. And you cannot have agreements in US dollars here in Brazil, but you can reference to international commodity price, for example, if it's the case, or um, I mean, established ranges. In terms of negotiation, if the price fluctuates too much. So, but I think what is important to say is that the financial market here in Brazil has many instruments to protect, to hedge any position the company has here in Brazil. So the Brazilian banks are very good at it. The international banks are here as well, providing again structures to companies, right, to hedge any asset. Any product, etc. So it's a very sophisticated financial market as well, I have to say, and again, very safe, very deep, and very solid. So very robust. So we have very big banks, and most of the Brazilian big banks, they are multinational banks as well, and the biggest banks from the world are also here, right? The U.S. ones, the American ones, the European ones, even Asian ones as well. They are here. So you will find a safe and sound and robust and deep financial market to protect yourself and your company in terms of, any volatility or fluctuation you may find here along the way.
Thank you, Rodrigo. And last, in your opinion, what is actually the most compelling opportunity we see today in Brazil?
I think you mentioned many, during your presentation, right? So in the financial industry, you have the payments industry. We at Latam Cham, we have received missions from Singapore, for example, in the payments industry, in the cybersecurity field as well, right? Services for the financial industry, microservices as they call for financial industry as a whole, right? You mentioned the digital money. So every Brazilian has a phone, right? Some people have more than one. So everything you're gonna do here in Brazil, if you do through your app, through an app, it's no problem, right? Brazilians love, to use WhatsApp. So all companies here in Brazil have a connection with the clients through WhatsApp using AI, or someone helping the client through WhatsApp. So it's something that every company needs to have here as well to connect with the final client, right, the consumer. And so You mentioned as well agribusiness, agriculture. So Brazil, as you mentioned, right? Within the farm, we are probably the best in some cultures because the technology applied in the farms here in Brazil are huge and it's growing. So AI applications and many other types of applications are helping the Brazilian farms to, I mean, deliver very high yields in terms of productivity. When we talk about the logistics, as you mentioned, so we need much more infrastructure. So also a very good opportunity to invest in Brazil is infrastructure through PPPs, or some states are more friendly to foreigners to invest in infrastructure. They have programs, etc. Energy transition, and as you mentioned as well. So we started the ethanol, right, production from sugarcane more than 30 years ago. Now we see so many new plants to produce ethanol from corn, for example, and the all the new frontier for agriculture in terms of recovering degraded pasture land to transform into a farmland, a productive farmland as well. So it's a national program now in place, attracting investment from abroad, etc. So many opportunities. AI, as you mentioned, right? AI as well. Brazil is growing. We have energy to, I mean, support data centers. Also, Brazilians are very entrepreneurial, right? So I mean, creative in a way. So we have so many venture capital as well, growing here in Brazil. So new ideas, and also we also have so many multinationals, Brazilian multinational companies, right? So, we put companies that started in Brazil are Brazilians, owned by Brazilians. So 30, 40, 50 years ago, and now they are a multinational company. I mean, selling their products and services all over, right? So, again, I think so that those are the main segments we see. Urban mobility, just to say one more, urban mobility as well. It's another key issue for us here in Brazil, and so there is a lot of room to grow.
Thank you, Rodrigo. We have a question which I think you have already answered. Will be the unique opportunities what are the unique opportunities Brazil's offer relatively to countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand? So you live here in the region, you know what they're referring to, which might be easier to access for Southeast Asia investors. So I think you have answered very much of it in terms of the fintech and digital
Okay.
economy.
Yeah. So just one comment about it, right? So for example, Indonesia, it's a large country as Brazil, a big population, right? I mean, uh, really big in terms of area, etc. So just to say a company, right? So Shopee is very successful in Indonesia and is also very successful here in Brazil. So they started the business 5 or 6 years ago here in Brazil, and now they are. I mean, the largest in many aspects in terms of delivering, selling products through e-commerce. So another important segment here in Brazil is the e-commerce, right? Of course, grew a lot during the pandemic, and it has been growing since then. And again, if you want to reach your final client, you need to have a good platform or connect your product or your service through one of the biggest ecosystems we have here, and then reach your client, for example.
Okay, well, thank you, Rodrigo, very much. We are coming to the end of this presentation. We have a last question coming in here. So let me just Maybe it was in the chat.
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
seeing here. So tokenization, right, in the financial market is also, growing, and it's something that is happening, right? In the banking business, in the payments business, and uh, and I'm sure banks here will be, keen on learning more about your application, for example, and what you can offer. So things that are new, that are, revolutionizing, let's say, the markets in Southeast Asia, are welcome to come to Brazil because, as I said, banks, for example, the financial industry and other industries, they people here are open to learn, to understand. Sometimes it's not easy to integrate with the local systems, but once the solution is good and it's suitable for the needs of the company here or for the to help the client, etc. So the companies here will be open to discuss and to integrate and develop together with you from there and have your solution as a part of the ecosystem here. So keep this in mind.
Thank you, Rodrigo, very much to you and Joao for their interventions. And if there's anything we can support from the Latin Cham in doing business and opportunities, business and investments in Brazil, please do not hesitate to contact us. Please contact our country manager. He is based in Sao Paulo. So the idea of our country managers is actually to give you first access. They are very networked and connected people who has navigated their economies for many years. So with that, we will like to thank you all for being here, and we will be sending later this session recorded. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.